Alright, so I'm Susan Threadgill, aka Snoozin' Susan, and today I'm going to be talking about how to do wet fur because when I did my polar bears, everybody likes the wet fur. So, and I approach it a little bit differently than I do regular fur because it's a different sort of beast, but it's really, really, really fun to do. So right now I'm doing this picture of a wet dog, just looking at you. I thought it was cute and simple. I got my reference photo off of Flickr, and I just usually pull my photos into Photoshop, and I adjusted it to black and white. The contrast was already pretty good in it, so I didn't need to do any contrast, but a lot of times I'll go in and either do some dodging and burning, or Photoshop offers like auto contrast. I always work off my laptop. That's why it's usually covered in black dust. And I like to because I can zoom in, zoom out. I don't have to print out a bajillion different things, and it's useful. And then if I'm like something in my reference photo I can't see very well, then I can Google something real quick to get a similar, position for whatever I'm working on. So with the wet fur, it's really, really simple to do. You still have to pay attention to fur direction, although wet fur generally tends to clumps, and it kind of does its own thing. So if you can see on the reference here, instead of it being layered like it is on, like the nose has this direction, here it's clumping, it's twisting, it's turning, and it automatically creates its own layer and contrast. So what I do is I pick a section, and what I usually do is actually I work from the back and move up. And so I'm going to start down in this area, which is here on my board. And I start, usually when I'm doing like regular fur, I start at the base of the fur and I pull towards me. But with wet fur, the tips are actually usually brighter. So I start at the tip of the clump of fur, and what I do is I pick a section and zoom here, and then I make my first line, and then I come over and I start at the tip, I curve in a little, and then I make the second line, so there's my clump, and then I work in the other hairs, and I make these softer. They overlap, it's got the layers. But I only go up so far, and then I usually come over and I stagger these. Again, I make my outline, and then I come in, and then you get these series of clumps, and then like I might do one here, crisscross behind, and it goes that way. So like the outsides and the tip are the brightest, and then when I'm adjusting my values, I usually go back through, so my light's from the front, so I'll make a couple strands on top just a little bit brighter to try to give it a more of a 3D effect. And then I go back in and I do the next layer, and I actually usually leave just a little bit between the layers of black or almost black on the board, and this immediately kind of gives it like the depth and contrast you normally get with like doing your layers and re-inking. It's kind of hard to work at this angle, but and then you just layer in your clumps really, and so I might bring this back in a little closer there, but I'm basically going to leave this section right in here. I'm not going to scratch in there. And it really makes the clumps look more wet and kind of pop, because I'm going for that more chunky, clumpy look, opposed to up here where it's overlapping in that same direction. And I mean, then you can go back, you just keep layering up, and it goes by pretty fast. You just switch up your shapes a little bit. Keep in mind the fur direction, so most of mine are going to curve this way. When I get in here, they're mostly going to curve in like that. But you can have ones that, stray a little bit, because it's not going to be, whenever I got the animal wet, it's usually going to have been you know, something to mess it up. It's not going to be perfectly laid in fur. And for black wet fur, which I have like up in here, it's the same technique, and I would stress to do it like first so that you're working in behind. And I already started it here. You can see it's a little bit lighter. Then to outline it, I'm just gonna start the white fur underneath it, a little brighter, but I want to make sure I just leave a little bit of shadow, and then come back in. And that's basically how I do it, I guess.
You add water drops to the tops of your wet fur sometimes?
If it's like really close, like with this I wouldn't, because it's so tiny and far away that you wouldn't see it, but like in the polar bears I had little drops of water, and I think it's fun, especially if you're doing like a wet animal, if there's some sort of water action in it to kind of give it a whole sort of scene, which unfortunately this one doesn't, but like with your shaking dog, it had the water and that was cool. And the polar bears, I had the water flying off the paws, and I think that kind of brought the scene together more. So if you can have water with your wet animals, it's cooler.